Hey everyone, today we're going to do an introduction and demonstration of the Dvario P18 connector. The Dvario is one of the lesser known connectors in the P-system family, but it's got some great applications. It's a sliding shelf connector. It's a little bit different. It's got a female half that's a P-system slot and a male half that's got a couple of 8mm tabs on it. And it's a sliding shelf connection. So if you imagine this is a cabinet upright and this is a shelf, or if this is a cabinet carcass and that's a partition, you can have a front loading and locking shelf connection. That connection locks with 35 pounds of clamping pressure. And in weak material like MDF or particleboard, it has 150 pounds of shear strength. So this is a really great application that you'll find for things like fixed shelf bookcases, wine racks, shoe cubbies, mailroom cubbies is a great application. So to get started with Dvario, you guys are going to want to start out with a Dvario starter set, which includes the installation tool and 80 pair of the connectors. And then you're going to want to purchase the Dvario marking jig, which comes with the marking jig, the 8mm brad point drill bit, and the stop collar. So before we get started here, I want to point out one little subtle difference to you guys. So on my right here in the center of the screen is a brand new Zeta, which if you notice here on the base cassette, it has the little center indicator mark. That indicates the exact center of where the cutter is, which happens to also be 10mm from the bottom of the base cassette and 10mm down from the bottom of the flip stop. If your machine is older, this is my own personal machine. It's from around 2015 or so. If you notice, there's no center mark indicator on it. So you're going to see me use this machine in the video, and I'm going to reference the center mark. You could either buy a new base cassette for your machine, or you could simply etch a center mark in there if you'd like to on your own. But I just didn't want you to get confused in the video if you just heard me referencing about this center mark when you don't see one in yours. That's why it's an older machine. And then another thing we're going to show you is when we're going to make this running slot with the Zeta for the Dvario connector, we can't leave these cushions on in place because that would make a surface that would be difficult to slide the machine along. So we're going to pop these friction tabs out. And the way I like to do it is I like to pop a little utility knife or jackknife into the seats and just pop the pads out. And you just want to make sure you keep these or put these back in your box because they're pretty light. The force from the air of the machine will blow these away across your shop, so you don't want to lose them. Okay, so for this demonstration, I've labeled the front edge of this workpiece as the front of my shelf, just for references, so that you'll see how the demonstration goes. This is 19mm or 3/4 inch thick material, and so what I've done here is I've made my mark at around 9.5mm, and I've got a mark here running along the edge. And this is the situation where we're going to be using this little marking gauge on the side of the machine. And so now, instead of using the flip stop for making this running slot with the Zeta, which would only allow me one height setting, it's also be dangerous because there's an exposed cutter head. This is one of these other situations where we're going to use the stop square for the Zeta. So take your stop square, you get one with every machine, and you slide this on with the double dovetail ways. And now you adjust this down using your center mark, and then tighten the thumb screw down. And so now I've got my cutter lined up where I want my slot to be. So we're about to make this running slot for the Dvario connector, which will allow the male half of the connector to slide through in that channel. If this was back in my shop, I would have put a 1/4 inch wing cutter and a shaper or a router to make this slot. There's really nothing special about it. It just has to allow this half of the connector to pass through. And so this is a 7mm thick cutter in the Zeta. So again, a 1/4 inch wing cutter would work just fine. But you can do it all with the Zeta, especially if you need to do it on site. So if you've been using the regular connectors that are most popular, the Tenso and the Clamex P14, this is probably how your machine is set right now at max and at 14. So to make this running slot, we're going to turn this knob to 0. And we're going to turn this top knob off. So another useful feature of the stop square are these reference notches that you're going to use in a Dvario application. So if you notice, I've labeled the front edge of my shelf here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my cutter here, and I'm always going to be referencing from one surface of your shelf. So I'm going to use my middle notch here for starting my cut at top dead center. I'm going to plunge my machine in and run it along here, and then I'm going to stop once my right-hand notch gets to the front edge of my workpiece. That'll ensure that my cutter doesn't blow out through my long point. And then you'll see the reverse happen when I flip this around, where I'll have my nosing will be on the right side. In that case, I'm going to start with my left-hand notch, plunge in, which will make sure that my cutter doesn't blow out through that side again. Plunge in, run the machine, and once I'm past the top dead center mark, then I'm good. All right, glasses on for safety. Now that we've made our running slot on both sides, and by the way, you'd obviously want to bundle your tasks if possible and do all of your shelves first before you switch it back and do this step. But now we're going to make the pocket where the P-system connector goes. So we're going to change our knob settings back. This time we're going to, because this is a P18 connector, we're going to change that to 18 and then change this knob back to max. So now for making the P-system slot, I'm going to keep the stop square exactly where it was. I'm not changing that setting at all, but I'm going to disregard these positioning arrows on it, and I'm going to use the flush edge of the machine to reference flush with the edge of my workpiece on the front edge and the back edge to make my P-system slot. Now we're going to put the Dvario P connector into place. You have to use the Dvario installation tool. It's got these spring-loaded metal pins and it has a little alignment gauge. You're going to use this both to install the connector and to drive a pair of plastic spikes into the material to hold the connector in place. So you simply put the connector onto the tool itself and you'll see me line up this alignment gauge with the edge of the workpiece. Now, if you're working on a small piece like this, you can either work vertically because it's so small. If you're working on a great big long shelf, you'd obviously have to clamp it to the bench. Be a little easier to work that way.
Ready.
All right, so we're going to take the connector that's on the installation tool, slide it into the P-system slot, and get it more or less parallel with the alignment gauge and the edge of the workpiece. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then just a wrap with a dead blow mallet, and that's it. Alright, so for those of you that don't have a CNC router, we're going to use this really nice quality drilling marking jig to make these two 8mm holes that are 32mm on center with each other for the position for the male half of the Dvario connector. These just have little friction tabs on them and they tap into place that you'll see in a moment. So this is a great accessory for being able to do that by hand. Okay, so we're going to make a couple of arbitrary marks. I'm just going to set my combo square at 3.5 inches here. And what I'm doing here, again, this is arbitrary. I'm just going to describe a center mark of where I want my shelf to go that I've just processed. So now, using this marking jig, these are a couple of sharp trammel points, and there's a little center marking jig here. So working off the front, now this will be your cabinet upright. So you've got a front and back of your cabinet upright. You use the marking jig and line the little center notch up over the mark that you just made. I like to hold it down on the back edge of the jig once I've got it lined up on my fence and my mark, and so that it keeps it square. And then just tap those two trammel points. That gives you a center point. Do the same thing here on the back edge of the cabinet. And now we've got our center points. We're going to use our brad point drill bit to make the hole. I like to hold on to the stop guide. This is a nice free spinning stop guide, so if you have a veneered material, it won't mar up the surface. And now, clean off our dust. And now we take the Dvario connector itself, hold it over the holes, tap them into place, and we just want to make sure that we don't see any daylight between the connector and the workpiece. I'll check it myself. Those look pretty good, and that's all there is to it for putting in the male half of the Dvario. All right, so now that we've got all the machining done, we're going to show you how to assemble Dvario. It's pretty easy. So let's pretend this is our cabinet upright divider, and this is our shelf. So you're going to start from the front. It's a front-loading connection. So you just have to get through that first pair of connectors. There'll be a clamping moment when they reach top dead center. Then they'll be a little bit loose with each other, but then once you get together and the last two are about to join up, you just either tap your fist or dead blow mallet and tap it together so that that joint's perfectly flush. And so, once again, this has 35 pounds of clamping force and about 150 pounds of shear strength. All right, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you found this informative. If you have any questions or comments, please post them below. And for any updates, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And also, you want to follow along with us on our Instagram channel. It's at Lamello_USA. You want to tag us in your projects. We'd love to see your content, what you guys use in the system for. Thanks again.